blessings, all my 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 blessings.
I need my blessings every penny, daily counting every single one, I'm seeing plenty.
Thanks for rolling in today. We're going to talk a little NFL as we have some real highlights. I haven't been particularly paying close attention to the NFL Combine. I don't think it's super exciting. We'll get more of that as we actually head closer to the draft at the end of April. Watching, Sauce, the corner from Cincinnati, try different sauces wasn't particularly appealing to me. Some of the measurements were fun, but of course we have the ever going on controversy of, are the hand timed 40s really the most accurate and all that other junk. So I'm sure we can have the Kenny Pickett, the Pittsburgh quarterback, hand size discussion another day, because that was one of the highlights for a full day. So a lot of that junk can wait till the actual NFL draft. But let's get into some of the highlights today. Carson Wentz was flipped to the Washington Commanders for a 2022 third-round pick and a 2023 conditional third-round pick that could become a second-rounder, according to NFL insider Ian Rappaport. I assume the 2023 conditional pick, is going to be attached to playing time or snaps on the field, so it's very likely that we could have a 2022 third-rounder and a 2023 second-rounder to the Colts in exchange for Carson Wentz. It's also a swap of 22 second-round picks, moving the Colts to 42 and the Commanders back to 45, so a switch of 5 spots. The Colts have already released T.Y. Hilton, tackle Eric Fisher, and tight end Jack Boyle is retiring at the age of 31, so the offense will look a lot different next year. Of course, the offense will look a lot different next year. Of course, general manager Chris Ballard, never one to sit on his hands, will have to rebuild that offense with all those pieces gone around Jonathan Taylor and presumably Michael Pittman Jr., who stepped up a little bit last year. Those two combined account for less than $3 million against the cap this upcoming season, while shipping off Carson Wentz pushes the available cap room for the Colts from roughly $40 million to about $70 million, just under $70 million of available cap space out of the newly announced $208.2 million available for this upcoming season, up from $182.5 million last year, which was a slight decrease from 2020 due to the pandemic. So $208 million is roughly our target number this year, and the Colts now with $70 million to play with after shipping off Carson Wentz. And the two key offensive pieces right now on rookie deals still, accounting for less than $3 million going into this season. The Colts do not have a first rounder this year, so getting additional picks is certainly a help. They have the pick 42 now in the second rounder after the pick swap. They have 2 in the third, a fourth, a couple in the fifth, and a few late rounders as well. So the pick exchange does help the draft capital and moving forward. I think it'll be exciting to see what the Colts can do from here, what Chris Ballard will put together. The division will still be very winnable. The Titans, of course, are in the way. The Texans, we still don't know what the hell is going on there. Jacksonville, we don't know. So what is the plan going to be at quarterback? The trade for Washington is a little bit questionable for me personally. This trade isn't super exciting. It doesn't really move the needle. Wentz did have a 27 touchdown to 7 interception ratio last year, 3,500 yards, 62% completion percentage. Nothing to scoff at, but I just don't think he really moves the needle as far as moving into a more competitive playoff team. It also completely shrinks the available cap space that Washington had to really make moves, so we'll see what they do making forward. Their division also isn't terribly threatening right now. I don't know who you're scared of with Daniel Jones and the rebooting Giants yet again. The Dallas Cowboys, everyone's questioning cutting Amari Cooper. Should that come to pass? As of the time of recording, he is currently still on the roster, but he would save a tremendous amount of cap room for the Cowboys and give them some cap space to work with instead of being over the cap. So that's certainly still a possibility and a likelihood. And the Eagles may have overachieved last year with the talent that's on the roster. We'll see with Jalen Hurts. But it doesn't take a whole lot, probably, to keep yourselves in the conversation for that, to push for a playoff spot. I'm not sure that they upgraded enough to really differentiate themselves from the rest of those squads. Transition to a much more interesting move. Russell Wilson, in a massive trade, moved to the Denver Broncos. Seattle will receive quarterback Drew Lock, tight end Noah Fant, defensive lineman Shelby Harris, pick number 9 in the first round this year, a second rounder in the fifth rounder this year, and a first and second rounder next year. So first, second, fifth this year, first, second next year. So the number 9 pick overall this year, as well as Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, Noah Fant. Drew Lock's contract is expiring at the end of this year, as is Noah Fant. Shelby Harris has got 2 years left, and he is the big get here. Of course, Drew Lock is kind of a placeholder. We'll see what the Seahawks do at quarterback. Noah Fant will hopefully be productive in that offense. But this is a big move for Seattle. Pete Carroll is in his 70s. He's the oldest coach in the NFL. He's double the age of a handful of the younger dudes there. So big changes coming for Seattle. You have to wonder if Pete might be looking to retire maybe at the end of this year. He's older. He's got to be looking towards the end here, as it could be a full rebuild for Seattle. Bobby Wagner has already been cut, so we're going to see huge changes on both sides of the football in Seattle. You have to wonder what this team is going to look like heading into next year in that competitive division with the Niners, the Rams, and the Cardinals, who are scrambling to make sure that they lock down Kyler Murray. So it's hard to see Seattle making a lot of noise, obviously, with the roster they have now, and that'll be a team to keep an eye on heading into the draft. Russell Wilson walks into a phenomenal situation that we thought last year was set up right for just a quarterback to come in and take over that team. In addition to Russell Wilson, the Broncos will also get a 4th round pick. So there's that. He walks into, obviously, a division with the Chargers, Chiefs, and the Raiders, who have to be in panic mode. The memes online are ridiculous. That division obviously now home to Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. So Derek Carr, whether you think he's a top 10 quarterback or not, is automatically, at this point, penciled in as the number 4 quarterback in that division heading into the season, which is tough. Very, very tough. So the Raiders are going to be in full panic mode right now. And that division as a whole, if you're a defensive coordinator, you're not getting much sleep and planning on how to disrupt these quarterbacks and these offenses. Of course, everyone is excited about the new weapons on that offense, or I should say the new weapons for Russell Wilson, the weapons we've been watching with Teddy Bridgewater. But we have Jerry Jeudy, of course, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick. Hopefully everyone will be healthy for that wide receiver core. Melvin Gordon will be returning at running back with Javonte Williams. That's all great. The offensive line doesn't need to be elite, but we do need. That is a possible concern, and that was a very middling group last year, especially in the interior. They gave up 28 sacks last year, which was towards the bottom of the league. So if there's one wart right now on that offense, it might be the interior of that offensive line. Now, nevertheless, Russell Wilson is a Denver Bronco. Stock down for Seattle and the rebuild. It will be exciting to see what happens there. And Denver, top of the watch list heading into 2022. I would like to take one moment and point out a certain sports news outlet has been floating out that Russell Wilson is the best quarterback in Denver since Peyton Manning, and I'm really confused by the message behind that statement. First of all, Peyton Manning was 7 years ago and not 17. Almost half the league could make a case that they've had equivalent or worse quarterback play during that span. Manning also didn't equal a Super Bowl when operating in his prime. He won the MVP in 2013, but the Broncos won Super Bowl 50 in 2015, when Brock Osweiler was better statistically and with on-the-field performance, and combined they threw for more interceptions than touchdowns during the Super Bowl winning season over the Panthers. Osweiler essentially drug Peyton Manning's corpse through the end of the regular season, setting up a Cinderella run for Peyton to grab the reins again heading into the playoffs because Osweiler was also not productive. And the coaching staff was able to reasonably make a change back to Peyton heading into the playoffs. So recent history in Denver does not correlate strong quarterback play. Ooh, say that 10 times fast. Strong quarterback play in Denver doesn't correlate with winning titles. So I'm not sure what message that sends, that Russell Wilson is the best quarterback in Denver since Peyton Manning. The Broncos do still have cap space. By the way, I forgot to mention that. They have about $26 million in cap space. And while Russell Wilson will be making about $24 million this season and $27 million in 2023, Mr. Aaron Rodgers will be making close to $47 million this year and a projected $50 million per year with a 4-year, $200 million extension. So we don't know what the numbers are going to look like. Of course, Aaron Rodgers tweeted that not everything has been sorted out yet. So I guess we're to assume that not everything has been sorted out yet. I don't know. Don't know what to make with news from that. We have reporters that are so close with office officials and top GMs that we should have very close details. And then we have players saying the opposite. It just seems like we should have pretty good accuracy on a lot of those things. But we have people talking out of both sides of their mouth. It's hard to understand why we can't get exact details. Nevertheless, we should have those contracts, his contract information very soon, I would assume. And he is going to cut into the cap big time. Green Bay is currently somewhere around $45 million over the cap. So they're going to have to figure that out. Pro Bowler Zadarius Smith, edge rusher, is on the chopping block. They could save a good chunk of change by chopping him, and that would be problematic for the defense. Devontae Adams has already been franchise tagged. The franchise date has come and gone. He will be a part of the team heading into 2022. Rodgers and Adams contracts will take up around 35% of the total available cap space for the Green Bay Packers. That's if they manage to get under the cap. So that's what they're looking at as far as being cash strapped and why they have to make harsh cuts. So it's just interesting to me as to why Aaron Rodgers would sign such a massive deal. Perhaps the reason it's taking so long to sift through is because he's deferring or converting a large number of the salary into different bonuses, so it won't hit the cap as hard, giving him an opportunity to bring in different players for the team. That seems like it would make sense. Why sign an extension pushing into your 40s if you don't have a real opportunity to win, especially when you've been disgusted with the on-field product around you so far? So that's probably what we're looking at as far as this contract. I'd imagine there's going to be a number of stipulations in there that will be malleable with that cap flexibility. I want to touch briefly on Calvin Ridley and all the comments that have come out on his sports gambling and his 1-year suspension that have resulted from him placing reported three parlays over Thanksgiving while he was away from the team for mental health issues and was caught. So he did receive a year-long suspension. And unfortunately, that's appropriate. You can't have someone interfering with or giving the illusion that the game is being rigged. You just can't. You can't have someone messing with the product. There are a lot of folks comparing the 2-game suspension of Ray Rice, the 4-game suspension of Greg Hardy, the 6 games for Adrian Peterson, 6 games for Elliott for, various forms of abuse that we all know about very well. And of course, the weed smoking of Josh Gordon. That was multiple seasons. At this point, that's all lazy arguments. We all know the NFL mishandled all those incidents. In the case of marijuana, that was to the letter of the law. Marijuana was on a long list of substances that could not be used. It was known. And plenty of players did not get caught using it, I'm sure. We know that if these events happened again today, they would not be handled the same way. So we can't keep dragging it up and using them as a point of reference. Well, we know that point of reference keeps changing. It's just lazy journalism or a lazy point of reference. When we know it was mishandled the first time and it would change should it happen again, it's no longer an accurate point of reference. So in this particular case, it has been made clear that NFL coaches, managers, players are not to gamble. And you can't give the illusion that you might be interfering with games or results. The product very much hinges on the fact that nothing is being messed with. And it's very unfortunate for Ridley, who's in a very difficult spot at the time, that all these sports books have been working with the NFL to make sure that this doesn't happen. So he was surely reported to the NFL. Now, a lot of sports gambling is going to actually help the NFL. It will create more viewership, which will in turn create more lucrative TV deals, which will in turn create a bigger cap, which will in turn allow teams to sign bigger contracts, which will in turn get more money into the hands of players. So it may not be immediate, but partnerships with sports books and gambling sites will actually end up in the players' hands. So if they just don't gamble, they will actually see this reflected in their contracts, in theory, down the line. I wish all the best to Calvin Ridley. He can appeal and hopefully get his game sentence shortened and maybe return to the field if he's feeling up to it. So all the best to Calvin Ridley in getting him safe, in a safe space, and back on the field if appropriate. All right, March Madness time. Let's get to the gotten. First of all, Gonzaga, the West Coast Conference, the WCC. They've already locked up their spot. That was as of last week. They were the number 1 seed in that tournament. They won over St. Mary's, a team who had beat them a couple weeks previous. Gonzaga should have locked up the number 1 overall seed. We will see tomorrow. St. Mary's presumably has a strong enough resume to make it in. It's possible that we will see San Francisco in there as well. Santa Clara, not a strong enough resume. Will presumably be a 3-bid league there in the West Coast. In the Big South, we have the mighty Longwood Lancers at 22-6, the number 1 seed there in the Big South tournament, and they did win the auto bid. 4 losses in quad 3 and 4, 0-2 in quad 1 and 2. Not a particularly exciting team. Both Justin Hill and Isaiah Wilkins made the all-conference first team. Justin Hill averaging 14 points, just under 5 rebounds per game, and Isaiah Wilkins averaging about 13.6 boards per game. So those two will need to contribute tremendously if this team is to make any advancement in the NCAA tournament. It's the first appearance for the Longwood Lancers. In the CAA, 5th seeded Delaware grabs the auto bid, knocking off number 1 seed Townsend 69-56 at a blowout win, and UNC Wilmington, who's actually the favorite to win coming into the season in the championship. This squad is highlighted by Jameer Nelson Jr., son, of course, of Jamar Nelson, whose highlight in the NBA was that 2009 Magic team that made the finals, based around Dwight Howard when he was younger, surrounding him with perimeter shooters, 1 in, 4 out, Dwight in the post, and 4 shooters. That was kind of the height of Jameer Nelson's career, for those who remember. And he was in tears in the audience as his son guided the Blue Hens to an NCAA bid. Delaware is 21-12. Again, not a particular exciting team. His son did make the all-conference first team. He averages about just under 14 points per game, about 5 boards. Again, Delaware Blue Hens, not a particularly exciting team entering the tournament as the 5 seed in the CAA conference. Not sure if they'll be a 16 seed. Maybe they'll make their way up to a 15 seed because there are only 6 spots, of course, for 16 seeds, so we'll see about that. Towson getting bumped will be a little bit of a disappointment at 25-8, and a couple quad 2 wins. They look like the type of team that might have been able to possibly pull an upset in the NCAA tournament, but we won't have the Towson Tigers probably in the NIT. Also in exciting news, Wright State, the 4th seed in the Horizon League, knocked off number 1 Cleveland State, number 3 Northern Kentucky, and number 5 Oakland. They were combined 0-4 against Cleveland State and Northern Kentucky in the regular season, but they did knock them both off in the tournament to grab the auto bid. So the Wright State Raiders at 20-13 with 12 combined quad 3 and 4 losses will probably be a 16 seed in the NCAA tournament. However, Missouri Valley, Loyola Chicago, entered as the 4th seed, a little bit in the danger zone of making the tournament if they did not grab the auto bid. Knocked off the top seed in Northern Iowa, Razor Cats, or whatever the hell they're called, the number 2 Missouri State, and the number 3 seed Drake. This is arguably a top 20 defense. They hold opponents to about 41% shooting and just under 62 points per game. The engine that really makes this go is Lucas Williamson. All first team, all defensive player. He's really the unit that makes this team go. Probably not as deep as in previous years. Williamson is averaging 14 points, 5 boards, 3 assists on almost 40% three-point shooting and 45% field goal shooting from the field. Again, great defensive team here in the first year for Coach Valentine, but we'll see what kind of run Loyola Chicago can make. Certainly capable of a win. We'll see it's capable of a couple depending on matchups. In the Northeast, Bryant, the number 1 seed, absolutely annihilated Wagner, the 2 seed, 70-43. There was a brawl in the stands that delayed play for about a half an hour. Really a tough scene there. We don't need to see the crowd fighting and instigating players to get involved too. Almost had a player in the stands. Peter Kiss is the leading scorer for Bryant, and he averages just over 20 points per game. He averages 25 points per game. Not a great three-point shooter, under 30%, 45% from the field. He dropped 34 points in the blowout win and was really showing off. So he might be quite a showman and have a few highlights if Bryant does anything in the tournament. So number 1 seed Bryant out of Northeast. Murray State out of Ohio Valley, another team that can make some noise, undefeated in conference play. They knocked out both Belmont and Morehead State. Those were 2 teams that possibly at one point in the season could have grabbed at-large bids had they not won the tournament. Schedules are probably too weak now. They're not even in the discussion, so they will be possible NIT candidates. This team, about top 20 scoring team, putting up just under 80 points per game and shooting just under 48%. They do have 2 top shooters. KJ Williams is putting up 18 points per game with 8 boards, 54% from the field, 33% from 3. And Tavion Brown is averaging just under 17 points per game with 5.5 boards, almost 40% from 3. And Justice Hill, 13 points per game. A lot of shooters. They have shooters that can put up points. They can move the ball. Murray State will be talked about a lot in tournament coverage, and it's a team that will be able to certainly win games. It would be a disappointment if they don't pull an upset somewhere. This is a team that can move up to a 12 seed possibly. Colgate out of the Patriot League, the number 1 seed, knocked off number 2 seed Navy 74-68. This team is number 2 in the country in 3-point percentage at just over 40% per game. Could be interesting in the tournament, maybe, maybe not. 22-11 overall, 0 for 2 in quad 1, and 1 quad 2 win on 1 attempt. So 1 and 2 overall in the top 2 quads. We'll see about Colgate going into the tournament. Out of the Southern Conference, Chattanooga will be talked about. A number 1 seed, another team that would have been a bummer if they didn't make the tournament. Won 64-63 in overtime on a half-court heave over 2 seed Furman that had me jumping up and down on my couch. Very exciting. Very exciting. So Chattanooga, the Mocs, they're led by 20-point per game scorer Malichi Smith. So this is a team that shoots almost 47% from the field, 35% from 3. Could be a very dangerous team heading into the tournament. Watch out for Chattanooga to bump up to 13 seed, maybe a 12 seed. Another dangerous team as well. And speaking of danger, South Dakota State would have been a 30-win team just about in the NIT had they not won the Summit League outright over North Dakota State. Number 2 in the nation in scoring at just under 87 points per game, and number 2 in field goal percentage at 52.5%. This is the best 3-point shooting team in the country by a mile at 44.9%. Douglas Wilson averages 16.5 points per game on 40% shooting. Baylor Shimiman, I'm not going to get that name right, 16 points per game on 47% from 3. Both shoot over 50% overall from the field. This is a very efficient shooting team. Very dangerous, very efficient, won't take bad shots. Size might be a problem, but this is a team that could be a 12 seed in the tournament. Against the right 5 seed, could win a game, could maybe win a couple games. South Dakota State Jackrabbits might be the most dangerous mid-major team in the field. But keep an eye out. South Dakota State, Chattanooga, Colgate, Loyola Chicago. Could be some interesting teams here. Murray State as well. Georgia State won the Sun Belt as the 3 seed. Not much to say about the Sun Belt. Was very much a up and down conference. They'll probably be a 16 seed. They're 15-10 overall. 8 losses between quadrant 3 and 4. Top seed Texas State, number 2 seed App State, both knocked out. No major losses there in the long run. The A10 did have a very unique situation where Bellarmine, I'll never get that right, Bellarmine won over Jacksonville, but they will not get the auto bid because they're leaving the conference and they're being restricted from getting the auto bid for the conference and making the tournament, which is a severe punishment, I think, but it's a league rule and a rule for a few leagues. So the regular season winner, not the runner-up of the tournament, but the regular season winner, Jacksonville State, who was knocked out 1 round into the tournament, will actually be heading to the NCAA tournament to represent the A-Sun. So unfortunate for Bellarmine, but Jacksonville State will be heading to the NCAA tournament. And the Jacksonville State Gamecocks are actually 5th in the country in 3-point percentage at 38.8%. Don't really expect them to make a whole lot of noise though, but just keep that in mind. So what are you watching just before Selection Sunday as we're wrapping up tournaments and keeping an eye on my bubble? As I'm recording this right now, Vermont is about to knock off UMBC to wrap up the American East Conference on ESPN2. The Catamounts have made a meal of lower-level competition this year. They are 26-5, not including these conference wins, of course. I believe they're pushing 30 wins, if I'm not mistaken now. Only 1 conference lost in the American East. They are combined 25-3 in lower conference losses, so they are not without their blemishes. They have one quad 2 victory, 1-2 altogether in quad 1 and 2 games. So this is a team that hasn't had a lot of opportunities to play higher level competition, might be able to win a few games in the NCAA tournament. We'll see. The first round of what I believe is the inaugural Ivy League tournament is wrapping up as well. That tipped off at 11. The Ivy League previously did not have a tournament. The regular season winner just went to the NCAA tournament, won the auto bid. Last year, of course, the Ivy League did not play with the pandemic. They canceled all sports. This year, the tournament kicked off just today with the top 4 seeds, as far as I can tell. Number 1 seed Princeton and number 4 Cornell tipped off at 11. And at 2 o'clock following that, it'll be Yale and Penn on ESPNU. So keep an eye on that, I guess. The Ivy League doesn't exactly make noise in the NCAA tournament, but you can certainly put that on your watch plate as something to flip over. In the MEAC on ESPN2 at 1 o'clock, we will have top-seeded Norfolk State, who's made it a regular occurrence to pop into the NCAA tournament, playing number 7 Coppin State. Coppin State has actually knocked out the number 2 and 3 seeds en route to the championship. But keep an eye out for old Norfolk State. They knocked off Missouri as a number 2 seed a few years back, but Norfolk State could make another appearance in the NCAA tournament. As far as the A10, they play today, semifinals, 1 o'clock and 3:30 doubleheader on CBS Sports Network. Top-seeded Davison has been phenomenal this year. They'll be playing number 5 seed St. Louis, who's building a case to maybe sneak into the tournament. Chances aren't good. Chances are very slim. But those two will be playing the early 1 o'clock game. At 3:30, it will be number 2 seed Dayton and number 6 seed Richmond. Again, not good chances for either. Dayton has taken some bad losses this year. Of note, the 3 seed in the tournament was VCU. They're going to have a hard time getting into the tournament. They lost 75-63 to Richmond in an earlier round. Also, St. Bonaventure, who's top 25 coming into the season, lost by a point to St. Louis. So those two, St. Bonaventure probably out of the tournament. VCU is going to have a hard time. So if the A10 is going to get anyone in other than Davison, they're going to have to win the tournament and knock Davison out of it altogether and grab the auto bid. Most likely. The A10, of course, usually a very strong conference. Some years we get as many as 3, even 4 teams in. Of course, St. Louis, Dayton, Richmond, VCU, St. Louis, St. Bonaventure, George Mason, all teams that we know because they've made runs at various times over the years in the tournament. But Davison is the top team this season. They are led by Michigan State transfer Foster Loyer, who's putting up 16.5 points per game on 44% shooting from 3, and Hyung Lee, who's putting up 16 points per game on almost 40% shooting from 3. This is a great three-point shooting team, 38.7% from the floor. Fun team to watch. 26-5 overall. Be great to see them. If not, win the tournament and get a second auto bid team from the A10 in there that could make some noise. If they lock it up and win the whole thing, it'd be great to see them make a run in the NCAA tournament. The Big Ten, which I'm starting to lose confidence in as having a true Final Four team. They will be playing at 1 o'clock on CBS, doubleheader, 9th-seeded Indiana and 5th-seeded Iowa, who's capable of putting up a boatload of points, hitting over 100 in the game against Northwestern. Following that will be number 7 MSU and number 3 Purdue. You tell me which of those teams you have a lot of confidence in heading into the NCAA tournament. Purdue, who can't play defense, Michigan State, who can't play offense, Iowa, who's all of a sudden surging and might be the best team in the conference, Indiana, who's hanging on for dear life, I don't know. But Indiana took out Michigan and probably popped their bubble. and Michigan's almost surely an NIT team at this point, and took out number 1 Illinois. Michigan State bumped off number 2 Wisconsin. They did knock off the Badgers once in the regular season as well. Purdue will have an opportunity to improve its seeding. Indiana is probably in the tournament at this point, but will have an opportunity to lock itself in. Not much else to say about the Big Ten tournament. Michigan's probably out now. Rutgers is probably out of the NCAA tournament. So that's the Big Ten tournament right now. SEC, much more fun. Texas A&M and Florida on opening day was a kind of a bump out game, and Texas A&M knocked off Florida in overtime 83-80 and turned around and punched out Auburn 67-62. They had a massive lead early and hung on late. Arkansas crushed LSU 79-67. Those two play each other today starting at 1 o'clock on ESPN. That's 8-seeded Texas A&M, who probably still needs another win to make sure it makes the NCAA tournament. They weren't even in the conversation earlier, but that's what these tournaments can do. You compile a number of wins to really not only move yourself into the bubble conversation, but into the tournament altogether. So number 8 seed Texas A&M, number 4 seed Arkansas, who is also surging at 1 o'clock today, ESPN, followed by number 2 seed Tennessee and number 3 seed Kentucky. Those should be excellent games. And on ESPN2, 3 p.m., 5 p.m. is the ACC doubleheader. That's the AAC doubleheader. My apologies. That's number 1 seed Houston, who has gone most of the season without its top 2 players due to injury, and number 5 seed Tulane. Houston's going to have an interesting seeding proposition heading into the NCAA tournament. Great defensive team. They're only 1-4 against Quad 1 teams. They are 8-1 against Quad 2, but only 1-4 against the top quad. Just not impressive at all for a team that's 27-5 overall. We're going to see what the hell happens with Houston, seeding-wise and tournament play altogether. In the 5 o'clock game, 2 seed SMU and 3 seed Memphis, who have presumably both played their ways into the NCAA tournament. We will see. Memphis had turmoil early with Amani Bates enrolling and lineup issues and just all kinds of problems. They're one of the worst turnover teams in the country. Early on, they cleaned it up a little bit. We'll see about what the Memphis Tigers can do and SMU as well. But possibly 3 of those 4 teams already in the tournament. Not necessarily a play out for SMU and Memphis, but a win would certainly be a lock, I would think, in for whoever wins that game at 5 o'clock. But that's the 3 and 5 semifinal AAC ESPN2 today. At 4 p.m. on ESPNU, we have a rather shocking MAAC final with 2nd seed St. Peter's and 4th seed Monmouth. Monmouth, of course, made the tournament just a couple years back. Was an amusing group. Ionia was the number 1 seed, coached by Rick Paterno, and they will not be in the NCAA tournament. They were upset by a point by 9th seed Raider earlier in the week, so they will not be in the NCAA tournament. They were a heavy favorite to win the conference, which they did, but they lost in the conference tournament, so they will not grab the auto bid, and they will not grab an at-large bid. Ionia and Rick Paterno, we will not get any storylines or any coverage of him returning to the NCAA tournament. So, gone. Ionia, Rick Paterno, gone. We'll get either St. Peter's or Monmouth. That game, 4 o'clock, ESPNU, MAAC Championship. At 5 o'clock, number 1 Texas and number 3 Texas Tech in the Big 12 Championship on ESPN. The conference as a whole has seemed to be fading a bit recently. Kansas beat TCU 75-62. TCU did beat Kansas in the first round. It was probably already in without that win, but they will be in the NCAA tournament for sure. Texas Tech beat Oklahoma 56-55. Oklahoma had a shot to make a run, to build a strong enough resume to make the NCAA tournament. They're just not going to make it. So Kansas, Texas Tech. Kansas could work its way up to a 1 seed if it's not there already by beating Texas Tech. So just seeding at play here. Kansas did lose to Texas Tech on the road by 8 earlier in the season, and they did win by 3 points in double overtime. So Texas Tech winning here would not be a stunner. So it could be an interesting game. We'll see. The Mountain West has been tightly contested the entire season and will get multiple teams into the NCAA tournament. The top-seeded Boise State Broncos will be playing in the final on Saturday night. They will be playing the Aztecs of San Diego State. Boise State is 26-7. San Diego State is 23-7. It was a little bit on the bubble, but they will surely be in the tournament now. That is at 6 o'clock on CBS, the Mountain West Championship in prime time. That'll be an excellent game. Both teams, again, in the NCAA tournament already, so they'll be playing for seeding more than anything. Matt Bradley for the Aztecs puts up 17 points and 5 boards per game. He's a 41% shooter from 3. He'll be exciting to watch. But other than that, the Aztecs pretty much play basketball like they play football, a whole lot of defense. And the Broncos have 3 guys that average double digits in scoring, but that'll be an enjoyable game to watch. 6:30, the SWAC Championship on ESPNU. Texas Southern, Akron State. There'll be a 16th seed. Not a whole lot to see there, but that is the SWAC Championship, 6:30 ESPNU. Also at 6:30, the Big East Championship. This should be interesting. Another hotly contested conference. Largely Villanova and Providence rolled through, but the kind of middling group was very interesting. Villanova did beat Providence in both games in the regular season. Providence missed a number of games due to the pandemic and illness, but Providence was still the outright championship due to winning percentage in a weird twist. However, Providence was hammered last night by Creighton, 85-58. Creighton also beat Marquette 74-63, and they are rolling at the championship here as the 4 seed in the bracket. Villanova the number 2. They survived UConn 63-60 and St. John's 66-65 in a game they won at the free throw line. So Villanova surviving, Creighton rolling big teams. We'll see who wins there. The fun storyline in this week in this conference was Butler, who was the 9th seed. They did beat Xavier 89-82 in overtime, pushing Xavier presumably from in the bracket to out of the bracket. So tough loss there for the X-Men, losing in overtime to Butler, the 9th seed, and Butler nearly beat Providence themselves as well. But Creighton and Villanova, Big East Championship on Fox. Both teams were already coming into the tournament, but 6:30 Fox, Villanova Creighton, Big East Championship game. Also at 6:30, Conference USA. 3 teams would have been fun to see if they make it into the NCAA tournament. North Texas, Middle Tennessee, and top seed UAB, the Blazers. Here we do have the UAB Blazers, number 1, and Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech and North Texas, who holds teams to the number 1 defensive teams and holding teams to fewest points per game in the country. But they lost that badly yesterday, 42-36, as Louisiana Tech beat them by a couple buckets. And UAB survived triple overtime against Middle Tennessee, 102-98. They are 24-7 overall and 4-3 in quad 1 and 2 games. They do have a winning record. This is a strong team. It looks like they could do some damage. It'd be great if they can survive Louisiana Tech's smothering defense and make it into the tourney. It'd be great to see. 7:30 on ESPN2, we will get the MAC Championship. Toledo would have been a fun team to see in the NCAA tournament, but they took a tumble yesterday, 70-62 to 4th seeded Akron. That's who we'll see tonight against number 2 seed Kent State. So keep that in mind as a channel flipper. At 8 o'clock, we do have the championship game for the Big Sky as well on ESPNU. That is the top-seeded Montana State Cougars, I believe, and North Colorado, who I believe is the Bears. I believe they're the 4th seed. So a couple smaller schools there. The Big West Conference Championship is at 8:30 between Long Beach State and Cal State Fullerton on ESPNU. 8:30 ESPN monster game. ACC Championship. Duke, no surprise, overwhelming favorite, best team in the conference, and Virginia Tech, who has gone on a tear. They knocked off North Carolina last night. They were not even in discussion, not even thought about to make the NCAA tournament. But of course, this is why we have these conference championships. This is one of the few teams, maybe one of the only teams in the Power 5, 6, 7, depending on how you consider the basketball conferences here, that has really built a resume to put itself in the tournament. They survived on a last-minute bucket in the opening round to beat Clemson 76-75, a team they lost to days earlier on the road. Then they beat Notre Dame 87-80 and North Carolina 72-59, really damaging North Carolina, who again has only 2 quad 1 wins. Notre Dame, who's seemingly in the tournament, but really doesn't have a great quality schedule either. But there shouldn't be a sure thing. Wake Forest lost earlier in the tournament. They shouldn't be a sure thing as well. So it's really up in the air who the ACC is actually going to get in. Presumably it was Duke, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Miami, probably Wake Forest coming in. Now there's all kinds of question marks. Probably Duke, North Carolina, maybe Notre Dame, probably Miami, maybe not Wake Forest coming in, probably not Virginia. And Virginia Tech here has now added 3, I believe they're all quad 1 wins to the resume. A win over Duke could put them in the NCAA tournament. So this is actually a monster game. Virginia Tech's resume coming into the tournament was just completely empty. They were 2-5 in quad 1, 6-5 in quad 2 at this point. But they were 22-12 overall, with 19 of those wins coming over teams that are not going to be in the NCAA tournament, with a possibility of 3 of those wins over teams maybe in the tournament. The best win was a road win at Miami. So the past couple days have doubled the quality wins on their schedule, the real quality wins. Sometimes just looking at quad 1 and quad 2 as a number is not really that helpful. So win tonight over Duke is still probably a must-have to grab the auto bid to make the NCAA tournament. The quality of the wins just isn't there. A loss today, despite 3 wins just to make the final, probably puts them in the NIT. So this is actually a massive game for the Hokie Pokies tonight. Their senior forward, Kiwi Aluma, will still be a massive piece of this win, averaging over 15 points per game and shooting almost 53% from the floor. He put up 18 points against North Carolina, 20 points against Notre Dame, and 19 points against Clemson. He's going to be critical if they are going to win tonight. We wrap up the evening with mostly small conferences, just wrapping up teams that probably won't have any impact on the NCAA tournament. Fox, 9 o'clock. Number 1 seeded Arizona and number 2 seed UCLA of the Big 12. Our last big game of the night. Of course, USC has proved itself to be the third fiddle, the third wheel in this group here, so they will certainly be in the NCAA tournament, but they did lose to UCLA last night. Colorado couldn't make a run. This will be a 3-bid league. Number 1 Arizona, number 2 UCLA, both who play tonight, and UCLA. Arizona can play itself up to a 1 seed. UCLA possibly up to a 2 seed if they win. So big seeding implications here. A couple more small games to finish out the evening. 9:30 will be the Southland Championship between Texas A&M, Texas A&M CC, Corpus Christi, and Southeast Louisiana. And we do have a 10 o'clock between Abilene Christi and New Mexico State. Teams that both have impressive records. Abilene is 23-9, and New Mexico State is 25-6. But we haven't seen them have opportunities against high-quality opponents, and they certainly don't have the wins against high-quality opponents. So not a whole lot to gauge by there. We will have to see what happens should one of them make the NCAA tournament. They won't be high picks for me in early estimations, pre-biased. But once we see the matchups, I'll make my judgment there. But right now, not highly regarded in my book. I'll be back throughout the week as the tournament rolls on. I'm very, very, very excited for that. Reach out to me on the socials. Let me know your thoughts, questions, concerns, certainly your comments. I'd like to know your thoughts as we progress through the tournament and into Selection Sunday. I am so excited.
All my blessings, 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 all my blessings.
I need my blessings every penny. Daily counting every single one, I'm seeing plenty. Level up and watch that beat turn into a